Here we are. I am here with Darren Rahn. We are meeting once again.
Again, for the second time.
The second time, right. We tried to do this one time sooner. It was fall in Chicago.
The American Smooth Jazz Awards.
Yes, but that didn't work out. So now we're back here. We're here in Detroit. And what better place to be? My hometown, right?
Your hometown, Detroit, and in a recording studio. I spend like half my life in recording studios. So.
Great place to be. So you are Canadian born.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did you come over here to the U.S. and...
Well, I was born in a tiny little town in Invermere, Canada, which is up by Banff National Park. It's one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth. It's kind of north of, Glacier Park, National Park in Montana.
Okay.
And then north of that. So the further north you go, it just gets nicer and nicer and nicer.
Oh.
The glacier lakes and stuff up there. So I was born up there and raised in British Columbia, and then, I think during grade school we moved down to California, Southern California.
Oh, okay.
For a few years, and then...
That's a nice place to be, too.
Yeah, well, we were in San Diego, too. It was beautiful.
I love that place, okay.
Yeah. So I think when I was in junior high, we moved to Colorado.
Okay.
And then I've been in Colorado ever since.
Okay. Now, I did not know this at the time when I met you in Chicago back in October, that you had a twin brother, Jason.
Do.
I had no idea. And here he is. He plays trumpet, guitar, and he sings.
Yes.
What a childhood that had to have been with you in the house and him, too.
Actually, a lot of people freaked out at the award show because a lot of people didn't know
which one they were
Jason,
talking
right?
to.
So he had a lot of people walking up to him, and we've had some really, really funny experiences that way.
You know what? I had no idea, and I didn't find out until after the fact. And I was like, geez, I wonder which one I was talking to then, because I just assumed.
It might. You know what? I think we said hi. You might have been. I think you talked to Jason for a while, because I remember leaving. I remember thinking, oh, I really didn't get that much chance to talk to Marissa.
Well, we saw each other in the green room,
right.
And you were with Nate, and I have a picture of you two. Now that is you in the picture with Nate.
Yes, that was me.
Oh.
Yeah, we freaked out a lot of people out. I did a gig in Wisconsin not too long ago, and my brother really freaked out Mindy Aber. Mindy and I talk sometimes, and Jason was walking through, and Mindy was like, "Hey, Darren, blah blah blah," and she was looking at him like, "That's Darren? No, that's not Darren. That's Darren. No, that's not." And they started talking, and my brother says, "I know you, but you don't know me." And he said, "I'm Darren's twin brother," and she freaked out.
So you are identical twins?
We're identical twins, yeah.
Oh my gosh, wow. Yeah, I was a little late in finding that one out, but yeah, I thought that was pretty amazing. And then he plays instruments and sings and all of that too. So let's talk about you.
Okay.
Do you remember the first song that you played on sax?
I actually don't remember the first song I played on sax because I started on clarinet.
Okay.
Actually, piano first, then clarinet. But it was jazz because I started saxophone in junior high jazz band.
Wow.
So I always wanted to play saxophone, and I went in during grade school and said I want to play saxophone. And they said your fingers are too short. And it was a lie. They just had too many sax players.
Oh, is that what that was?
And they needed clarinet players. And they gave my parents the sob story. Yeah, if you start them on clarinet, it's an easy transition to the saxophone, and blah, blah, blah. So they got their clarinet player, but I was miserable on clarinet. So the first opportunity I had to move to saxophone, which was baritone sax, in was 6th or 7th grade, and it was as big as I was. But I didn't care. I didn't care. I just wanted to play the saxophone.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we leave your childhood years, do you have one fond childhood memory in relation to music? Is there something that stands out for you that you just will remember all your life?
I think really the formative years of my childhood, my parents had a gospel singing group.
Oh, okay.
And so I just remember those times, and they would include us kids as they could, and they'd bring us up to sing in front of people and stuff like that. And it was kind of frightening, but at the same time you kind of felt that little adrenaline rush.
Right.
And so yeah, I remember at that age just always loving music, and anytime I had a chance to do music, it just made me really happy.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You're in Denver, Colorado, and you spent most of your teenage years and whatnot that's where you were residing?
Yeah.
Okay, so you attended college there?
Yeah.
Okay, what college was that?
Well, I came out of high school, went to my undergrad at Adams State College in Alamosa, Colorado, a small town. I really took the reverse path than most people. I mean, most people go to the big music school and try to break into their career. And for me, I always kind of felt like, early on, I had a great musician, a saxophone player. His name was Bill Murray. He played for the Air Force jazz band. Okay. Great player. And I remember him telling me, he said, Darren, he said, if you don't have your own voice, you're not welcome to this discussion. Oh. And it was kind of harsh to take that in as a freshman in college, but I knew I wanted to be a sax player, and so I took it to heart, and I thought, okay, even though I've spent a lot of time emulating my favorite sax players, great sax players, if I really want to do this for a living someday, I need to find my own voice. So I started thinking about that early, and so instead of going to the big school and being in the real competitive program, I took the opposite approach. I went into, I've always been a late bloomer, so I went to a small school and just locked myself in a practice room for four and a half years. And I probably played 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And I also had a lot of great opportunities at the smaller school because I was really able to be involved in the jazz program there instead of just kind of being a number. I mean, they let us compose music and got into
Was it actually a school for music?
Yeah,
then?
it was it was about my bachelor's degree. I went for music education. You know, my parents said, you got to have the degree to fall back on, right? And I never planned on falling back on it, but I thought, okay, I'll get my music ed degree. And, you know, the upside of that is really theoretically, I learned so much during college.
Okay, wow.
You know, that served me well. So I went to Adams State, and when I graduated from there, my brother went, same school, twins.
Of course.
Same thing for grad school. We went up to University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, which they have one of the better, at that time, one of the best jazz programs in the United States. And did my grad work there, got my master's degree in saxophony and jazz pedagogy. Wow. I did classical and jazz. And then I started on my doctorate. And I was about a year away from my doctorate when I finally said, I've got to go play. Okay. You know, I got to play from my heart. Okay. So that's when I left there and pursued my dreams. Okay, so is it correct to say that you really start your, per se, music career in the industry then in the mid-90s? Yes,
doing
exactly.
Behind the scenes? Yeah,
it was, you know, it was funny because when I came out of college, I mean, saxophone was everything for me. Okay. And I thought, I mean, my dream was to get a record deal and be an artist. And I came very close. I mean, I had a lot of the, you know, big smooth jazz labels at that time looking at me and interested in me, but you know, it's kind of, the industry was getting kind of fickle already at that time, and it was like, oh, I don't know, we've got so many artists, and I don't know if we have room for new artists, and so, you know, I just thought, hey, I'm just going to keep making records, because, you know, people can get deals and those can come and go. Right. But the one thing they can't stop, no one can stop me from making music. Right. And so I just really delved into that, and that put me in the studio a lot. And I still played out live with my band. Spent tons of time in the studio, and as I did that, you know, people started listening to the work I was doing in the studio, and they really liked it. And they said, hey, you know, will you do something for me? Right. So, I mean, I did so many different styles, everything from, you know, jazz, straight ahead, smooth jazz, contemporary jazz, fusion, gospel, R&B.
I was just about to say, did you step out of jazz?
Work with rap, work with some rappers.
Really? Good for you.
I really did a whole lot of stuff just out of my home studio, and it was completely unintentional. I became a producer. You know, I didn't have any formal training as a producer.
And that was not necessarily your intention to do, or it just happened?
No, but I think what happened was, well, I started to do it. I started to learn about the music industry and realize, hey, wow, you know, before I was producing, I was working 5, 6 nights a week at clubs, coming home late at night. And, you know, I didn't get to spending time with my wife. And, you know, it kind of hit me after doing that for a year or so, that, wait a second, there's got to be a better way. And so when I started producing, I noticed, hey, I would get a call for a gig, and maybe it wasn't the greatest gig, or, you know, maybe it was a gig that maybe I would really enjoy that much. And so I realized, wait, I don't have to take that. Right. You know, because I have, you know, this production work to sustain me right now. So it was really healthy because it allowed me then, when I was doing my thing as an artist, it just allowed me to focus on what I loved.
Great.
You know.
Okay, so in my research with you, there were 2 key collaborations that you made that really paved the way for you as a musician. So let's speak a little bit about your collaboration with Wayman Tisdale and then Eric Darius after that.
Sure. Well, Wayman, I owe it all to Wayman. At the point that Wayman and I met, I was just about to hang up the towel. The passion was there and the love was there, but you know, I just felt a personal responsibility as a husband, and we were planning on having a family. I was like, you know what, I love this, but you know, I've got to really make sure that I have my, you know, have things taken care of at home. And so I was just about to do that, and I had sent some stuff to Rendezvous to check out for my record, and you know, 2 days later, Dave Cos was on the phone talking to me about my record, and I went out to LA to meet them. And they were not in a position at the time to sign me, and so I thought, oh man, what a bummer, you know, that would have been perfect timing. But they literally just a couple days before had signed Wayman Tisdale, and they were looking for that like Smoking Gun radio track, and Wayman wanted something new and fresh. He didn't want the same thing that he was hearing from everywhere else, and so they actually liked my production on my record so much, they said, hey, we can't sign you right now, but would you be interested in any production work if we can bring you any? And I said, no, okay, sure. And I mean, literally 2 days later, Wayman and I were face to face in their office, and he was offering me to produce Ain't No Stopping Us Now.
Good. Yeah. See, it's just funny. It's always phenomenal for me to hear stories like this. Especially when you made note that you were just getting ready to throw in the towel. And for me, that's a sure sign that this is your destiny to do this, because right when you were getting ready to call it quits, something intervened.
Yeah, I was, you know, the passion, like I said, the passion never left, but I'd hit that point. It's like I knew I was supposed to be doing music.
Right.
And I kind of had a silent all-out war with God. I was like, you know, I know this is why you put me here. I know this is what I'm supposed to do, and I've done everything in my power I can do, and it still isn't necessarily clicking. And then he brought that along, and I was like, okay.
Well, you were doing the right thing. You were thinking about your family and what, you know, as a husband, as a provider, you had, I mean, that was all correct for you to think all of that way, too. So.
Yeah, and they talk about really, you know, anytime you're in a position like that, it's not about are you good enough. Because that's a given. You have to be good enough. The question is, are you prepared when the opportunity comes along? And so I was really trying to position myself for that. And you know, I made sure when that opportunity came along that you know, I had all my ducks in a row and I was ready for, you know, for that situation.
So now you had your experience with Wayman, and now where does Eric Darius fit into all of that?
A friend of mine in California, a musician by the name of Bobby Wells, had that I had worked with in Denver a lot. A great guy, and he had actually moved out to LA. A lot of the guys in the smooth jazz industry have worked with him and know him. He said, "Hey Darren, you know, there's this young sax player from Florida that I met, and I just know you guys are supposed to meet." And so he put us in touch with each other, and Eric and I talked on the phone a couple times, and it was really funny because Eric and I, before, you know, within month or so of us meeting, all of a sudden Culbertson was, you know, auditioning for a new saxophone player in his band, and before you know it, he's got Eric and I auditioning for, I think probably a few other guys too, but Eric and I were both auditioning for Brian's band.
Oh, okay.
And he, you know, he had Eric fill the position, and I subbed for Eric a couple of times over the years with Brian's thing. But you know, for us, instead of kind of going the competitive route of, you know, oh, I want this gig, or, you know, it's like, hey, you know, there's enough room here for all of us, and, you know, whatever's meant to be is meant to be. And so we stayed in touch, and then when I finished my record, Once in a Lifetime, I gave a copy of it to Eric, and he had just signed with Narada. And Eric was like, wow, I really like your work, I like your record, I like the stuff you did with Wayman, you know, let's talk about working on my record together. And, you know, the rest is history. We started working, and we ended up doing a lot together.
Okay, so yeah, it's funny you just made mention of your Once in a Lifetime CD, because between your first CD, which is Once in a Lifetime, and that came out in 2007, right?
Yep.
And then your second, which is current now, Talk of the Town, which was 2009. How do you feel that you progressed between the first one and the second one?
Well, I think Once in a Lifetime, in terms of the execution on the record, I was happy, but I was still kind of, I had found my voice, but I was still kind of, you know, putting the finishing touches on who I was as a saxophone player. I mean, I was still, you know, I think I recorded on 4 or 5 different saxophones, mouthpieces, reeds. I was kind of just completing my search. The playing part of it felt really comfortable to me, but in terms of even my equipment, I just hadn't settled yet. And during that album, I was kind of on my quest too.
I see.
So,
well, they're both great CDs.
yeah, Talk of the Town, though, I made a point on Talk of the Town, you know, with the exception of the cover tunes, I made a point on Talk of the Town to write it all myself.
Wow.
And it was uncomfortable doing that because sometimes it's easier when you're working with other musicians and you can feed off of their ideas,
right,
and it sparks different creative things. Right. But I felt like with Talk of the Town, it really needed to be 100% me. And so I had to dig really deep. But I think, you know, the end result is, I think for me, Talk of the Town is definitely, you know, it's a reflection of who I am.
Yeah.
In terms of the music and the style.
Yeah, you have some great tracks on that CD.
Thank you.
We won't get into that. The interview will be another half hour. When you are doing your music, where do your inspirations come from? Not only for when you're writing for yourself, but perhaps others. Where does that come from?
I'll approach it differently depending on who I'm writing for. The hardest person to write for is me.
Okay.
Because it's really important to me to make sure, whether I'm writing for me or for someone else, it's really important for me to make sure that I'm writing stuff that I feel is unique. Like, there's a certain part of my sound that I can't really get rid of, but I like to push myself and kind of push my limits so that I don't stay in one place. But when I'm writing for myself, I'm hypercritical. I am,
sure.
And I'm trying not, I have to make sure that I'm trying not to sound like someone else.
Right.
In terms of the style of the song or whatever.
Right.
When I'm writing for other artists, usually it's easier. I've been really blessed to work with a lot of the guys that inspired me growing up.
Great.
So that was really...
So they more or less kind of tell you what they're looking for, and then you just
No,
go on
you know
with that,
what?
what is it?
Honestly, they usually just come and say, hey, you know, I love what we did last time. Let's try something. And I think that's what's been so cool, is that I'm not, you know, we don't sit down and say, hey, let's try to write this kind of a song.
I see.
It's like, I mean, maybe there's some small parameters like, hey, man, I need a ballad for my record.
Right, okay.
Or, you know, hey, let's just write something. And I write specifically for that artist. You know,
right.
I've had guys come to me and say, hey, man, you got any tracks sitting on your hard drive that'd be good for me? And I do. I have a ton of them.
I'm sure.
But more times than not, I prefer to start from scratch for an individual. You know, I did that with Eric, and I did that. And, of course, Eric had great ideas coming in.
Right.
And Wayman and I did that.
Good
Dave
for
Cos
you.
and I did that. Najee, Tim
You worked
Bowman.
with Tim Bowman, our Detroit
Detroit
guitar. There you go.
Shout out, Tim.
Hey, Tim. Okay, let's briefly get into the producers.
Okay.
Let's tell everybody what that's about.
Well, Paul Brown and I have, you know, of course, once again, growing up in the industry, of course I knew Paul Brown's stuff. Okay. And I admired his work and his mixing. And we had met a couple times and just, you know, friendly conversation. And, you know, a lot of people, I had a lot of people approaching me, kind of always comparing me and Paul, you know, and somewhat kind of pitting us against each other. And I don't think it was like they intended to do that, but it kind of comes across that way. And, you know, I've just never had that competitive mentality. Like, I mean, when I look at Paul's achievements in smooth jazz, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. You know, people think I have a storybook career. It's nothing compared to what Paul has done. And so there had been kind of some interesting stuff going on. And I actually, at one point, kind of defended Paul on a public forum and said, hey, you know, guys, let's give due respect. I said, let's look at, you know, what Paul has contributed and what he continues to contribute. I said, as far as I know, Paul just loves making music like I do. We don't see ourselves as competitors in any way. And so I had always had this concept in my head, 2 years ago. In fact, Nate and I had talked about it. Nate Harrison, about hey, maybe we could do the producers someday, and we just didn't have the time to put it together, and so just kind of set it aside. And one day I get an email from Paul saying, "Hey man," because I told Paul earlier, I said, "Man, maybe we should do a song together or do something, try to put this baby to rest, so people don't really think, we don't look at ourselves as competitors."
Okay.
And so, a couple months later, he emails me. He says, "Hey man, we should do a couple shows together. We could call it The Producers." And I started laughing because I had been thinking about something like this for a couple of years already.
Wow.
And so I said, "Yeah, why don't we do it?" And so we had a couple people interested in booking us.
Good.
And then all of a sudden,
that has got to be a smoking hot show.
It's fun.
Oh, it's got to be.
It's really fun. And the cool thing is, we get to dialogue on the show, and we get to approach the show from both perspectives as artists in our own right. But there's some segments during the show where we actually kind of get into the inside scoop a little bit for people. Like, being Paul's been kind of the foremost guy for a long time. In the last handful of years, I've just had my hands full, and I've gotten an incredible glimpse inside the industry. Labels, artists, all the different people that are working, and so we actually take a segment of the show to kind of sit down and discuss with the people and give them a little bit of the inside scoop on things.
Wow.
So
that's great.
Trying to give people a fresh approach.
Okay, so looking back, in all of that you've done up until now, what are your thoughts about your career?
Well, I know it's what I'm supposed to be doing. There was never any question about that, and I think my number one goal is to touch people's lives. I always enjoy being on stage, and I enjoy that role, but that's not why I'm in the business. When I'm on stage, I'm less concerned about the light shining on me, and I'm more concerned about what can I be doing to touch the people out there. We live in a tough time right now.
Yeah, we sure do.
And music has kind of been set aside by society. It's not a priority as it once was, and I think music is one of the few art forms that can transcend words. And even people coming to concerts with smiles on their faces. It's a rough time. We're all dealing with it right now, and I feel my best when I'm contributing to making their lives better.
Wow, that's great. So you're newly signed to Trippin' and Rhythm record label. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love all those guys there.
Great.
So now, I asked you to look back up until now on your music career. So now I'm going to ask you to look ahead. And so what is your next music phase?
Well, I think within the jazz stuff, I'm really trying to take myself into new territory.
Would you ever go outside of jazz?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Being a producer, it's been really cool because it gives me the option. It's like two different lives.
Yes.
Saxophone is saxophone, and I love it. And I think saxophone's making a comeback in pop music finally. So maybe there'll be some opportunity there. But for the time being, I'm happy doing what I'm doing on saxophone. But as a producer, I love pop music and commercial music.
Well, it's funny that you say that because my teenage daughters, there's this song, I believe it's by, I want to say Katy Perry, and is it Kenny G that does a solo?
Yeah.
And I heard the solo part in it. I just never knew that it was Kenny until they were up front watching it on the couch, the music video, and then the sax part came in, and I was like, wow, there's Kenny. Good for him.
Yeah, it's nice. No, it's really nice because there was it was so overdone in the 80s that I think people are like, okay, sax is done. They all joke, no more sax solos, right? And so through the almost for 20 years now, the sax has been almost non-existent in pop music as a solo instrument.
Yes.
Maybe with horn sections, but not as a solo instrument. And now it's finally.
Yeah. Well, that solo part that he did right there was hardly like your. Yeah, it was a pretty funky little solo he had put on there.
And I've always liked pop music. Right now I'm working with a rock band in Chicago, a band called Bellevue Suite.
Oh, wow.
And so we're working on some material together, and we'll see what comes my way. I won't abandon smooth jazz format by any means.
Of course not.
But I've always loved different genres, and I think stretching myself as a musician to go outside of just
I think that's wonderful. I think that is a fabulous thing to do.
Yeah.
So, well, in closing this interview, someone wanted me to pay you a compliment.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so I'm going to close out the interview like this. Over the summer, I had the privilege of interviewing Najee. And it is to my understanding that you are producing a song for him on a CD he's working on currently. And in conversation with him earlier this morning, he wanted me to make sure that I made mention in this interview that he thinks that you are a incredibly gifted person, and he feels like you are underrated in the industry, and he is there to help you with anything that you need to be helped with. Now, I mean, that's huge.
That's incredible.
That's huge. I mean, how does that make you feel? Because when he told me, I was like, oh.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm blown away. Just I'm completely humbled by that. So, Naj, thank you, man. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and there's a handful of guys that are so priceless as human beings.
Yes.
And Najee is right at the top of that list with a couple others. And rarely do I meet musicians who are so open to sharing music with other musicians.
Mm-hmm.
He's not concerned with securing his spot in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blown away by that. I mean, I grew up listening to Najee.
Yeah, I know.
I came up through Tokyo Blue, one of my favorite albums of all times, and we've had a blast working together. We're working on this new song right now, and we're trying to get back to. I said, man, Naj, we need to get back to that angular New York tenor, or it doesn't have to be tenor, but something
especially you said New York with that New York accent he's got going on.
It's like we got to get back to those roots, but then we also got to try to move forward in what we're doing. And he said, man, I want a tune I can really blow over.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I came from a point, of jazz and fusion jazz where we're really playing over tunes.
Yeah.
But then I love commercial music, so finding that thing. So, well, thank you, Najee. That means...
Well, I haven't heard the song yet, but he said that it is really good. So I'm excited. I can't wait to hear what you guys have conjured up together.
Awesome.
So, Darren, I can't thank you enough for today.
My pleasure,
I can't thank
Marissa.
you enough.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome.